How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
I'm sorry, but what is this? The head of Twitter now, she puts raisins in meatballs. That should be, isn't that like an ethnic crime or something? Good Lord. Wow. Sorry, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here. The Eric Erickson Show across the nation. The phone number 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. You can also text the word Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777 to get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, all that fantastic stuff. Follow me around social media to answer a question that, boy, did I get flooded with questions. Yes, I despise strawberries. This isn't what I intended to talk about, but now I must because of what I said in the last segment. I don't like fruit. When I was a kid, I got sick on a lot of fruit. I eat apples. I actually like apples. The Cosmic Crisp and the Pink Lady apples are two of the best. The Honey Crisp apple is fine, but it's so mass-produced now, and it gets very mealy very quick. And only during this time of year is the Honey Crisp really a good crisp apple. It doesn't last good. It doesn't have a good shelf life. The Cosmic Crisp is fantastic. I'll eat a Golden Delicious. I'm not big on Granny Smith. They're too tart to eat. I don't like cooked apples. I don't like apples in like apple pie. I'm not an apple pie eater. Shut up. I don't like it. I just want me a regular apple. Other than that, I don't eat fruit. I'm not morally opposed to bananas. I just can't eat them because when I was a kid, my grandfather was toothless, and he would eat soggy cornflakes, Campbell's vegetable soup, and he would gnaw on these bananas. And my sisters and I, to this day, all three of us are like, nope. We're done with bananas. You want me to eat banana pudding? Don't put the bananas in it. I don't like fruit other than apples. I don't like fruit. That being said, there is one fruit that I passionately love. Watermelon. A cold watermelon with salt on it is one of the greatest things a person can eat. And the one fruit that I passionately love, I am deathly allergic to. Cannot eat watermelon. The juice of watermelons breaks me out, closes my throat. I can't eat watermelon. It opens me up at one end and closes me up at the other. It's a horrible, horrible thing. No EpiPens survive when I am near watermelon, and melons in general. Cantaloupe, honeydew, all of it. I'm allergic to melons, but watermelon in particular, my gosh. And I used to love to eat watermelon. So none of you wanted the food proclivities until I mentioned how much I passionately hate strawberries. And everybody's like, you're crazy. And peaches, my gosh, I may live in the peach state, but they stink and they're gross. I've strongly held views about fruit. Luckily for me, the peach state now produces more blueberries, and I'm not a big blueberry fan, but they're not gross like peaches. All right, I can move on now that I've offended everyone in my audience, alienated all of you, and we can talk about Morning Joe. Oh, yeah, it turned into big news. Morning Joe, Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough went to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Donald Trump, and progressives are melting down. Over to you, Mika.
Over the past week, Joe and I have heard from so many people, from political leaders to regular citizens, deeply dismayed by several of President-elect Trump's cabinet selections, and they are scared. Last Thursday, we expressed our own concerns on this broadcast and even said we would appreciate the opportunity to speak with the president-elect himself. On Friday, we were given the opportunity to do just that. Joe and I went to Mar-a-Lago to meet personally with President-elect Trump. It was the first time we have seen him in 7 years.
Now, we talked about a lot of issues, including abortion, mass deportation, threats of political retribution against political opponents, and media outlets. We talked about that a good bit. And it's going to come as no surprise to anybody who watches this show, has watched it over the past year or over the past decade, that we didn't see eye to eye on a lot of issues, and we told him so.
What we did agree on was to restart communications. My father often spoke with world leaders with whom he and the United States profoundly disagreed. That's a task shared by reporters and commentators alike. We had not spoken to President Trump since March of 2020, other than a personal call Joe made to Trump on the morning after the attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania.
We can stop it there. Let me just go to the New York Times for that. This is just so good. The married MSNBC host Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough drove half an hour from their Florida home on Friday to meet with an old friend turned frenemy turned enemy, President-elect Donald J. Trump. Their relationship has been complicated. Mr. Trump was once a regular guest on their talk show, Morning Joe, and the couple rang in 2017 at a New Year's Eve party at his Mar-a-Lago estate. Then things deteriorated. Mr. Trump called Mr. Scarborough a psycho and Ms. Brzezinski crazy, claiming that he had once seen her bleeding badly from a facelift. Morning Joe became a redoubt of the anti-Trump resistance. This year, the couple repeatedly warned that a second Trump presidency would threaten democracy's future, even for talk show hosts. It turns out elections have consequences. That is the New York Times. The Politico is in on it as well. Morning Joe host Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski met with President-elect Trump in Mar-a-Lago on Friday, agreeing to restart communication between the three of them for the first time since March 2020. For those asking why we would speak to the president-elect during such fraught times, I would ask back, why wouldn't we? Brzezinski asked viewers Monday morning, adding that the host realized it's time to do something different, and that starts with not only talking about Donald Trump, but talking with him. Trump told Fox News that it was Scarborough who called to request the meeting, which he described as extremely cordial. Many things were discussed, and I very much appreciate the fact they wanted to have open communication. In many ways, it's too bad it wasn't done a long time ago. Y'all know I have a relationship with Joe Scarborough. I was teasing him about the Vandy, Alabama game several weeks ago. He gave it back in kind, the Alabama LSU game. When I was first getting started at Red State back in 2004, I got invited up to MSNBC, and this is really before they'd gone off the deep end. It was actually, I saw media bias. It was that night when Bush won the election against Kerry, and the producers, not just for reporters, but producers were literally crying that their children were going to be carted off to war by George Bush. I was like, wow, liberal bias in the media is real. It was Scarborough's team. They were the only normal people. Tucker Carlson was there at the time. I think it was Tucker was still there. Pat Buchanan was there. Joe Scarborough's team was there. And we've had a friendly relationship over the years, even as we have agreed to disagree on stuff and don't speak very frequently as much these days. I find him to be a nice guy, even as I disagree with him. And I tend to not like get mad at people and burn friendships over political views. But I just got to say, the last 4 years, whenever I've turned on Morning Joe, which isn't as frequently as it used to be, it has been a show dedicated to Donald Trump as the second coming of Hitler. And if Donald Trump gets elected president, its democracy is over. If Donald Trump gets elected president, it's going to be autocracy. You had Michael Beschloss on there just 2 weeks ago saying if Donald Trump gets elected, historians will no longer be allowed to write history. If Donald Trump is the second coming of Hitler, how can you break bread with Hitler? In fact, a lot of viewers, progressives, are furious with Joe and Mika for doing this. But here's the reality. Comcast made a choice to turn MSNBC into a pro-assassination network. Comcast has allowed these people on MSNBC, and Joe and Meek are the most reasonable people on MSNBC. You may not like them, but understand they're the most reasonable voices on MSNBC. And the further removed you get from the morning on MSNBC, the more likely you are to have someone who openly champions the assassination of Donald Trump without saying those words because they know they'd get fired. But it is, I mean, come on. Do you really think, I mean, literally, as Donald Trump is getting shot on stage, one of the MSNBC hosts is engaging a guy on how if Donald Trump is reelected, if nobody stops him, he'll be a dictator. An authoritarian democracy will end. And he's getting shot on a little bitty corner screen. He's getting shot as these guys are talking about this will be the end of democracy in America unless somebody stops Donald Trump. They're like, oh, we're so sorry. Someone nearly shot the man who, if he gets elected, will be Hitler. Nobody believed it. Now, Comcast is looking at selling the assassination porn network. And the ratings for the network have crapped out. So on election night, the day after the election, MSNBC sent out a big press release that more people watched MSNBC than any other network except Fox News for coverage. They crushed CNN. I was one of those viewers. When it became obvious that Donald Trump was going to win, you bet your bottom dollar I flipped over to MSNBC to watch Rachel Maddow begin her meltdown. And they were doing everything they possibly could to keep Steve Kornacki for telling people what was happening. It was the funniest thing. Steve Kornacki would come on, you know, the guy who reads their TV and stuff, and all the libs love him. And it's like, I don't see how over here we're going to be able to generate enough votes in Erie County, Pennsylvania to be able to pull this must-win county out for Kamala Harris. But, I mean, there are possibly some outstanding. Rachel's got to call a race. Rachel Maddow, we just won New Jersey at 2 a.m. And no one there other than Steve Kornacki is like, it might be a bad sign that it's 2 a.m. and they only just called New Jersey. No. They're like, surely she's going to pull it out if only Alaska flips. They're having an absolute meltdown. Everybody, I mean, hell, I know people at CNN who are watching MSNBC on their cell phones. True story. Everybody was watching MSNBC because we knew what would happen. And after that, what happened? Their ratings have turned it out, just gone. I mean, it is CNN is now ahead of MSNBC in all the ratings for all the shows because the MSNBC viewer has been lied to for 4 years that Donald Trump was the coming of Hitler and it's the end of America and there's no possible way he could win because the MSNBC polling showed he couldn't. And then guess what? He wins, their polling's wrong, and they're willing to sit down with him and break bread, but I thought he was Hitler. Listen, I wrote my piece this morning on Robert Kennedy. I am vehemently opposed to Robert Kennedy being the Secretary of Health and Human Services for all the reasons I said earlier, and I get this comment. This is a comment from Frank. I'm holding the expletive that this piece warrants. I'm done here. Canceling my subscription and encouraging others to do the same. Eric, with this, you are branded the enemy of the good people of this country. You're one of them. You are an upper-class political media chattering class bot that is the exact type of person in the media that we just elected to rid ourselves of. I'm done with your type. It's time to lump you into the basket of real evil that is basically the collection of self-anointed superiors that scold the rest of us for being not good enough to occupy your hallowed life space. Name a damn Trump appointee that you have not jumped to oppose. Why does anyone buy your inauthentic brand of conservative? Because I, as a conservative, don't want a pro-abortion progressive in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services. This guy not only says I'm an enemy, but I'm also evil. And by the way, name Trump appointees I didn't jump to oppose. Marco Rubio, Mike Huckabee, John Ratcliffe, Jay Bhattacharya, Pete Hegseth, Susie Wiles, Steve Miller, Mike Walsh, Tom Homan, Lee Zeldin, Elise Stefanik, Stephen Witkoff, John Sauer, Will Scarf. There are plenty of others. Long list. There are only like 3 or 4 I've said are bad. But this guy is melting down because I've been really consistent in what I believe. Now take this guy who melted down at me for saying, I don't want a progressive, pro-abortion gun control advocate in charge of Trump's Health and Human Services Administration, and he's calling me evil. Think about the MSNBC viewers who have been lied to for 4 years by that network that there's no way Kamala Harris or Joe Biden's going to be beaten. Joe Biden's the best, sharpest, most brilliant person ever to be president of the United States, and Donald Trump is the second coming of Hitler. And now to have that whole network flip and say, oh, we got to have break bread with Donald Trump. Maybe we should begin lines of communications with Herr Hitler. Look, I like Joe. I like Mika. I think they're fine people, but I think that you're on a network that for 4 years has told everyone, including on your show, that if Trump gets elected, it's the end of democracy. So why do you break bread with that unless people there haven't been truthful? I try to never lie to you, even if you disagree with me. I try to never tell you what you want to hear when it's not what I believe. MSNBC for 4 years has been held hostage by the phantoms in the minds of its fans, and now they're going to pay hell for it, for lying for 4 years to tell those people what they wanted to hear. Good for Morning Joe for being the grown-ups in the room, though. Hello there. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson. The phone number 877-973-7425. There was a big story I was going to talk about. The big story is Joe Biden has authorized Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied long-range missiles in Russia. Major escalation of the war. Turns out it's not true. The Biden administration has only approved Ukraine using missiles against Russians in the Kursk region of Russia, where the North Korean army has amassed, waiting to help Russia invade. This is, yes, an escalation, but it's because the North Koreans have moved alongside the border into formation, preparing to invade. And so, yeah, of course we want to kill the North Koreans, too. This is actually a good move by Biden, just not nearly as expansive as the media claimed that it was. Folks, no institution works harder to give young people the best education in America than Hillsdale College. They really are the best out there. For 180 years now, Hillsdale's mission has been to develop the minds and improve the hearts of its students. And today, in just 30 seconds, you can learn what it means by watching a short video at ericforhillsdale.com. Since 1844, Hillsdale has focused on learning, character, and faith and providing just the kind of education needed to preserve liberty in this country. And they extend their mission nationwide through outreach efforts like their free Digest of Liberty Imprimis, which I've been getting since law school. Too many colleges and universities today indoctrinate their students to hate America. At Hillsdale, students learn how the United States became the freest, most prosperous nation in history, and they are reminded of the tools and knowledge needed to keep it that way. At a time when so many college campuses are just covered in division and divisiveness, Hillsdale students sign an honor code promising to respect the rights of others and rise to self-government. Please take time to learn about what it means to make Hillsdale College unique and what to keep it unique. Go to ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Find out what makes Hillsdale College so special, so unique, and so worth supporting. My fellow Americans, I'm delighted to have you with me. Thank you for listening. The phone number 877-973-7425 should you wish to be on the program. I say several things to my audience. I should have I probably need a coffee mug with all of them. See, people are stupid. It's true. People are stupid. Events change things. Say that a lot, too. Know when you're in the minority, even when you think you're right. Something you'll frequently hear me say. And also, precedent matters. Precedent matters. Never set a precedent you don't want your political opponent to use. If you're a longtime listener of this program, those are the things I most frequently say, and that last one is that on which we must dwell. When Joe Biden took office as president of the United States, one of the things progressives pushed for Joe Biden to do was to perpetuate an emergency due to COVID. It was a national emergency. And with a national emergency, the government had latitude to speed up things like, well, tell everybody to get the vaccine. Firing members of the military if they didn't get the vaccine. Telling landlords they were not allowed to collect rent from people. They did all those things under an emergency. And progressives wanted Joe Biden to expand the emergencies. Progressives wanted Joe Biden to do an emergency on gun violence in this country, thinking that it would loosen the rules for him to be able to round up people's guns. They decided constitutionally it wouldn't work, so they didn't do it. They've really wanted a climate emergency. Climate emergency has been one of the biggest desires of Democrats. Let me Google Biden climate emergency. Let's see what comes up here. Says, yes, this is Politico from 2023. President Joe Biden says he's already practically declared a climate emergency, but he's yet to actually make a declaration, which would give him a host of new powers to combat climate change as the country faces record-breaking heat and more frequent and intense floods, droughts, and wildfires. We've already done that, Biden said Wednesday in 2023, again, when asked whether he was prepared to declare a national climate emergency during an interview with the Weather Channel. We've conserved more land. We've moved into rejoining the Paris Climate Accord. We've got a $60 billion climate control facility. When pressed about whether he'd actually declare an emergency, Biden says, practically speaking, yes. However, no such declaration has come from the White House. Experts say Biden could invoke the 1976 National Emergencies Act to give himself the power to order the manufacture of clean energy technology, deploy renewables on military bases, block crude oil exports, or even suspend offshore drilling, though that would require compensation to the owners. Though the law limits emergency declarations to 1 year, it could be renewed annually. And in fact, it's one of the tools the White House used for COVID to, for example, get the president to suspend landlords' abilities to control rent. Now, here's Forbes from May of this year, Biden's climate emergency, green policies on steroids. According to a Bloomberg report last week, White House officials have renewed discussions about declaring a national climate emergency. The intent is not new. 6 days after President Biden's inauguration, then newly minted Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer called for the president to declare an emergency over the climate crisis. In 2022, the administration considered a similar emergency declaration after negotiations on clean energy legislation stalled. Then there's the Sunrise Movement, the progressive movement of psychotic kids who want to either save the planet or commit suicide. They want a climate emergency. They're demanding Joe Biden declare a climate emergency and use every tool at his disposal to mobilize the U.S. government to stop the climate crisis and save lives. It is true. It is true that the Biden administration never formally declared a climate emergency. They laid out the roadmap for it. One of the reasons the Biden administration never declared the climate emergency was because they were actually afraid of what the extent of the president's powers and the pushback he would get from business groups and what it would do to the economy, an economy that already was suffering from inflation and slowing down, with a possible recession looming at the time. So they never did a climate emergency, but they laid out the legal path to do so, and they did so after, in 2021, declaring a healthcare emergency and refusing to allow landlords to collect rents. And they extended that healthcare emergency over and over. Precedent matters. Yes, they didn't do the climate one, but they did the healthcare one, and the precedent matters. And I have warned progressives for years. If you set a precedent, don't expect the Republicans won't use it when they come back to power. Don't do something unless you want your opponent to do it. This is from Axios. This is why I bring all this stuff up. President-elect Trump confirmed Monday he's planning to declare a national emergency and use the United States military to carry out mass deportations. Trump made his promise to deport millions of undocumented immigrants one of the cornerstones of his 2024 campaign, and his team has already begun strategizing how to carry it out. Tom Fitton, the president of the conservative group Judicial Watch, posted on Truth Social earlier this month that Trump was prepared to declare a national emergency and will use military assets to reverse the Biden administration through a mass deportation program. Trump reposted Fitton's comment Monday with the caption, "True." There are an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants living in the United States. Notice they said undocumented, not illegal. They're actually documented. How else do we know that there are 11 million? They are 11 million documented illegal immigrants living in the U.S. Trump's mass deportations are expected to impact roughly 20 million families across the country. Immigration advocates and lawyers are preparing to counter the plan in court. The president-elect's team is aiming to craft executive orders that can withstand legal challenges to avoid a similar defeat that befell his Muslim ban in his first term. He's also put in immigration hardliners like Tom Homan as the border czar. You know, mass deportations of illegal aliens are incredibly popular with the American public. My buddy Scott Jennings last week was on CNN making that point. And everybody melted down about it. But it's true. It's a real thing. What's so wild to me, though, is that you've got Democrats out there who they can't accept the reality of the situation, and they continue to, for example, insist that we can't do it or we shouldn't do it or it's somehow bad. And I need to remind you, one of the things that's going on here is what's really at stake is these Democrats, they need as many illegal immigrants to stay in this country as possible to impact redistricting. Because the census does not take into account citizenship for representation in the House of Representatives. It takes into account people in a state. So illegal immigrants are counted in the census. That's what's happening here. That's why the Democrats are doing this. But you also get the very perverse, we need a slave class in this country. You've got the Matt Egan is the reporter for CNN having this exchange with Dana Bash on CNN. Listen to this.
Going to rebuild. CNN's Matt Egan, you see him there. Matt, what happens to food, to farming, agriculture, if there are mass deportations when a lot of these businesses use undocumented immigrants?
Yeah, Dana, listen, food would get more expensive, possibly a lot more expensive, and that would directly undercut another Trump campaign promise, which is to get inflation under control. Now, the big economic problem here is that we're talking about industries that are heavily reliant on foreign workers. Many of them are undocumented. And so when you have fewer workers, it means less food and, yes, higher prices. Let me just show you one example. If you look at farm crop workers, a plurality of people in that industry, 41% are unauthorized. That's according to the USDA. One farmer in Michigan told me that mass deportations would be, quote, devastating to the ag economy because there just would not be enough people to pick the crops. But it's not just about farmers. If you look across the food supply chain, there are many different parts of this that rely on tens or even hundreds of thousands of undocumented workers, everything from food processing to groceries and, of course, restaurants. Altogether, an estimated 1.7 million people who work in this space are undocumented. Now, we've reached out to the Trump transition. They have not gotten back to us, but in the past, they've argued that Trump's campaign proposals would not make inflation worse. But I've got to tell you, economists that I'm talking to, they're saying the exact opposite, Dana.
Ladies and gentlemen, there are 11 to 15 million illegal immigrants in the country, and according to CNN, only 1.7 million of them work in the food industry. So in other words, we can deport 10 to 14 million illegal immigrants in mass deportation, and it's not going to affect the economy. Also, notice the continued reliance in the media on the phrase undocumented immigrant. If there are 1.7 million undocumented immigrants working in the agriculture and food industry, how do we know that if they're undocumented? Or are they documented? They're documented aliens. But if they're documented aliens, are they legal or illegal? This is the stupidity of the phrase undocumented immigrant. Because how then can Matt Egan say that there are that many working in the industry unless someone has documented these people? So are they documented or are they undocumented? Are they legal or illegal? The fact of the matter is we have laws in place. And this goes back to the Democrats in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, where they're trying to steal the election from Dave McCormick by counting ballots that the state Supreme Court said were illegal. And the response was that, well, everybody breaks the law. You got to have respect for the rule of law. And the rule of law is these people aren't supposed to be here. If you want these people to come here, design a law for them to come and go. We had this law until unions got Lyndon Johnson to kill it in the late 60s. We had a law. It allowed immigrants to come to this country for 6 months at a time. They didn't even pay taxes. They just came across the border. They worked in the fields and they went home. They sent their money home. They didn't stay. They didn't have citizenship. They didn't have a right to vote. And the Democrats killed that in the 1960s. And now we have this serf class in this country that are illegal. They're not supposed to be here. They can get deported. And the media's like, we can't get rid of our slaves. Who will pick our cotton for us? This is literally the argument that is being made on CNN, that who will pick our cotton if we don't have slaves? That is the argument. Yeah, you know, this is the wild thinking of the left. Abortionists make the same argument as slave owners in the 18th century and the 19th century. It's my body. It's my property. You don't have to have one if you don't want one. They're not really people. Same arguments from the abortionists that the Confederates made before the Civil War. And now we've gone full circle with progressives to who will pick our cotton if the Mexicans aren't here. That should disgust and revile every one of you that this is the argument that progressives are making in response to Donald Trump's pushback that we should have mass deportation of all the illegal aliens. And if you follow the numbers from CNN, as they insist we need Mexicans to pick the cotton, it's 1.7 million out of 11 million people. I think we'll be okay. It's just amazing to me that they're all, it's the matter of the rule of law doesn't matter. It's the we need the Mexicans to pick our cotton. That's the argument at CNN. Forget the rule of law. Absolutely unreal. And how can they be undocumented and yet be documented at the same time? Are they Schrodinger's illegal aliens? I don't know. Now, let me tell you about Americans for Prosperity. Y'all, so there are groups out there saying they contacted millions of voters in this election. Americans for Prosperity is the largest leading grassroots organization in the country, and they're on the right, and they contacted millions of voters as well, but in each state. Millions in Georgia, millions in Pennsylvania, millions in North Carolina. They knocked on doors. They found voters. They got them engaged. They got them educated on the election. They motivated them to vote, and they turned them out, and it worked. Americans for Prosperity's ground game was second to none. You want to know why people crossed the victory line when there wasn't a GOP ground game effort? Is because of groups like Americans for Prosperity, and you can be a part of it. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org today. Check them out, americansforprosperity.org. They, my friends, have chapters in almost every state. They'd love to have you involved. I'm involved with them. I'm going to go give a speech for them in December out in Utah. Great group, advancing common sense conservative reforms in this country. If you want to be involved with it, go to americansforprosperity.org. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I want to squeeze in phone calls if I can. Dave, you're going to be up first. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you for all you do, Eric.
Thank you.
A quick note, maybe a bit of tongue-in-cheek and not totally out of the realm of reality. We're worried about all the crops being untended when we deport millions of illegals. But then when we pare down the federal government with all the furloughed federal employees, and many of whom haven't done any real work in decades anyway, seems to me like putting a lot of those people to work picking oranges and broccoli and lettuce would be a great use of all that surplus manpower.
Yes. 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 Take the people from the Department of Homeland Security that we're laying off and have them go do the works that they say Americans won't do, or from the Department of Education in particular. Yeah, Dave, that is a great idea. Tim, you're going to be the last caller. Welcome.
Hi, Eric, long-time listener. I just want to know, why can't we just cut their benefits off, their free phone, everything, and then go from there?
Well, so a lot of these guys don't even have those benefits. They're allowed to basically hang out in the country and work until their court appointment date to assess them, and then they got to go packing if they don't meet criteria. And I am totally fine with what Donald Trump intends to do. I mean, here's the bottom line. We are either a nation or we're not a nation, and what separates a nation from not a nation is, in the very beginning, a border. And the Democrats have decided to not take the border seriously because they have wanted to flood this country with illegal aliens in anticipation of the 2030 census. They need as many of them here and ensconced in communities and hopefully even having kids who become American citizens so that by 2030 they will have it. So, for example, right now, California is expected to lose potentially up to 4 congressional seats in the 2030 reapportionment, assuming just a third of California's immigrant population is illegal, and it's probably higher than that. California could lose 8 seats if they were mass deported. That's why the Democrats are fighting, because California does not want to lose any congressional seats, and they're going to lose them. But because the census counts illegal aliens and legal aliens and American citizens all together for reapportionment of Congress and the Electoral College, they're using illegal aliens to prop up their Electoral College numbers. A mass deportation is a way to end this gaming of the system for the Democrats. And that's what this is all about, is the Democrats gaming the Electoral College system to pad their losses, round them up and deport the illegal aliens, and we'll deal with the consequences. But the rule of law should mean the rule of law.